teach you about systems approach. Okay. So it was given by David Easton. Okay. And it was a result of a behavioral revolution. Okay. And it laid emphasis on three most important things. Okay. First is develop, sorry, this approach, what David Easton wanted to be scientific, okay, universal, and value free. You can say these are the pillars, okay, pillars to this approach, systems approach, okay. Emphasis, so emphasis in this approach, emphasis was laid on holism rather than reductionism, okay. So where was the genesis of holism? Okay, so you can see in Aristotle. So you can also write this quote. Okay, this quote is by Aristotle. The whole is greater than sum of its parts. Okay, so you can write this quote by Aristotle in the introduction as well. Okay, so here now we can see the introduction. Okay, mostly is done of the systems approach. Now I will draw the diagram. Okay, of the general system theory or the systems approach. Okay, yeah. So the box that you see, the bigger box, is the environment, okay, and the smaller box is the political system. And now we are going to study about the general system theory. Okay, so I will write political systems, environment. The whole box is the environment, and after that you will see inputs and outputs as well, and a feedback mechanism as well. Now basically, if you see what are the inputs in a political system, okay, so inputs are basically demands and supports from the citizens, or the interest group or the pressure groups, okay, which are inculcated or inputted into the political system. Okay, political system recognizes them, understands them, and after that political system makes a decision or a public policy on the demands of the citizens and the groups. Okay, and these decisions and policies are called as outputs. Okay, so these outputs are then analyzed and measured with respect to how it affects the people, the institution, or the system. And later, after the analysis is done, from the output we get feedback, and that feedback is used again in the inputs. Okay, and this helps, or this leads to better inputs for the next demands. Okay, and now these inputs, okay, the feedback or the output, these all are influenced by the environment around it. Okay, now you can see that box, you can call it as state as well. Okay, and environment, what does the environment have? So basically it has like all the superstructures such as religion, caste, okay, etc., and all other things. Okay, which could affect the political system's inputs and outputs. So now let us take an example. Okay, for example, we will take reservation. So reservation is basically an a demand from the different sections of the society who are economically or socially backward, and they want to uplift themselves for a better life. So reservation is a means to it. So reservation is the input in this system. Reservation is the demands which is sent through the political systems, on which the decision and policies are made, and then the output is given. So for example, the decision and policies are given, and the policy says that around 27% of reservation to be allocated to OBC. But in OBC, not every caste is uh, socially, sorry, not every caste is economically backward. Okay, so in order to better inputs for the next demands, okay, the feedback is that subcategorization of OBC into creamy layer and non-creamy layer is required. Okay, so for feedback, you can I will write subcategorization there, and into creamy layer and non-creamy layer. Okay. So this subcategorization helps us update our demands. Okay. And this subcategorization is also influenced by the environment inside the box. Okay. Or inside the state. So now let's learn about the features of systems theory by David Easton. Okay. So the first feature here is that the system theory operates within an environment which produces demands. Okay. Now the second feature is that it is a demand and support based system. So what does demand and support based system means? Okay, so here demand means that not like here first the demand means that the demand is from different sections of the society. Okay, for example, about let's talk about reservation. So reservation is asked from by the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, the OBCs. Okay, now you can also see examples such as in Maharashtra, Marathas are asking for reservation. Okay, you can also see in Haryana, I think, that Jats are asking for reservation, and in many such places. Okay, the second thing is that not all demands, not opinions, not all demands are equally important. Okay, so different types of demands have different types of weightage, and that is why different levels of support is to be shown towards this demand. Okay, now the third feature is that the factors which should be considered. Okay, so, what factors are considered? Basically, the Constitution of India, okay, the institution, okay, institutions such as the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, okay, then history is also considered. Then, all these factors are considered to produce policy output, okay. Now, the next feature is that the feedback of the policy outputs, or the feedback that is generated from the policy outputs, help us generate new or updated inputs. Okay, that means what we asked first, we can again ask the same demands but with an updated or an improved demand which would have better support. Okay, and all these, okay, the process or the flow of uh, of the inputs through the political system, the outputs, the feedback, and again the feedback changing to outputs, all this result into a continuous and stable political system. Okay, so all this will result into a continuous and stable political system, as there is continuous flow of demands and of policies. Okay, so that is why. And this also has an active citizenry and active interest groups, so that results into a stable political system. Okay, so David Easton here concludes that political systems David Easton concludes that political systems result into authoritative allocation of values. Okay, so what does authoritative allocation of values mean here? Okay, so in short, here authoritative allocation of values means that political system has a unique recognized monopoly to make the final binding decisions on how society's allocative resources, okay, rewards and penalties are to be divided among its citizenry or among its people. Okay, so that is what authoritative allocation of values mean. Here in the input output model, you can also link Gramsci's superstructure. Okay, Gramsci highlighted that not only it is not only the role of a structure, like basically not only economic structure, but other superstructures as well, like religion, caste, ethnicity, okay, etc. All these others as well affect the inputs and output or the whole environment as whole. Okay, so you can write that Gramsci's superstructure there. Okay. So now let's read about the limitations of the systems approach. Okay. So the first point is the first criticism is that it is modelist in nature, which means it ignores micro perspectives, okay, and is too simplistic. Okay. It is too simplistic. Okay. The next critique is that it lacks operational possibilities, okay, in the real world, and it is not successful in the real world. You would not see much examples in the real world. Okay, now a scholar named William Michel, okay, so he criticized the systems approach, saying that the systems approach ignores social movement and assumes that or assumptions are misleading. Okay, so basically it does not inculcate micro perspectives. Okay, or you can say perspectives or demands of groups or micro groups. Okay, then next is the Marxist approach. Okay, so Marxists believe that it this systems approach is ideologically oriented towards Western liberal democracy. Okay, and they believe that this approach was an attempt to to put liberalism as a scientific approach. Okay, they wanted to show that liberalism is a scientific approach for which Marxism criticized them. Okay. So the next criticism is by traditionalists. Okay. So they criticized this approach for just being a conceptual framework, okay, and brings complex or complicated assumptions into the framework or the approach, okay. And also another scholar, okay, with the of the name Paul Kress, okay, so he also criticized the systems approach for being empty vision, or systems approach having an empty vision of politics, okay. So here the limitations have end. Now let's start with the conclusion. Okay. So conclusion. So you will basically write that systems approach does have limitation, but it it provided a foundational, a stepping stone. Okay, for further comparative studies. Okay. So Easton laid down the foundation for Easton laid down the for foundation of a scientific approach. Okay, and applied this approach to political science. Okay, later scholars like Gabriel Almond, okay, and Wallstein further updated, or you can say further enhanced this approach. Okay, Gabriel Almond's was structural functionalism approach, which we are going to learn next. Okay.